Welcome to the studio review for the Chapter 10 studio called Skills Tracker. This is our first time doing a project in Spring, where we are going to have a Java web application using the Spring initializer. This part I have kind of already done here, where I chose Gradle Groovy and Java as the language. Left it with the default version of Spring Boot that's not one of the snapshots. And then I filled this out, I'm just using org.launchcode for the purposes of having, this really should be launch code lowercase, but I have an autocorrect thing that keeps happening. There we go. And then for the artifact, you can just put in the name that you want the project to be. That's going to be your project folder, the package after org.launchcode, and it shows you that right down here, org.launchcode.class8studio. And I chose a jar file for the packaging and version 17. And then I came up here to add dependencies and opened this up, and I selected Spring Boot DevTools and Spring Web. And then I just hit generate here, and that downloaded that jar file to my computer, and I was able to put that where I needed it to be, unpackaged it and put it exactly where I needed it to be, which was in a Git repo that I had already cloned down from GitHub that was an open folder just waiting for this project. And then I opened the project itself, Class 8 Studio. I did not open the folder that was the entire repo because this is what I really want to run. So you can see here in the file tree that I've got, source main Java and then org launch code Class 8 Studio. And when you create a Spring project like this, it already has this file, Class 8 Studio application, that has a main method, and this is what we'll run. So all we have to do is add the controller that we need inside a controllers package. So I'm going to add a package here and call it controllers. And then inside that, I'm going to add a new Java class and call it skills controller. Okay, so that is, I'm going to make this bigger. That is the instructions that you're given right here, is to, take that file and put it where you need it to be, and then create this package controllers and skills controller class. So we've done this. Now all we need to do is write 3 methods. These are going to be handlers for different pages that we want to display and a form we want to process. And the first 2 are going to use the get method of, the different HTTP requests. And the last one will be a post so that we can actually process that form and then return results back to the browser, to the page, displaying some of those results using query parameters. So we will have something that looks like this in the first page, where we just list out some things. When you go to the /form route after localhost 8080, we'll have our form. Once that form is submitted, it should render something different at /form. And it would be the name that was filled out here and those 3 favorite, second favorite, and third favorite languages as an ordered list, just like this. Then for the bonus missions, we will reformat this to use a table instead of an ordered list. And then we'll also change the path so that instead of displaying this part at /form, the same place where the form is displayed, we'll give it a new route, which I'm going to call results, just to give it a different name. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Let's get over and do it. So we start over here, and the very first thing you got to do whenever you have a controller class is add the controller annotation. Absolutely necessary. When I hit the tab button, it added the import statement for us. And then for this one, all 3 of these handler methods, I'm going to be just returning text. It'll be HTML formatted as text. Because of that, we need to add this response body to say, we're not returning like the name of a template that we have in a folder over here or anything like that. We actually are just going to send this text directly with the HTTP request back to the browser. So by putting this at the class level, it means it'll get applied to all 3 of our methods instead of us applying it method by method. And that's just a choice I made. Since all 3 of them are going to be the same, why not put it at the class level, right? Okay, so first order of business is to do a handler that corresponds to localhost 8080. Then we're going to write the handler that corresponds to localhost 8080 / form to display form. And then we'll write a third handler. And it's also going to be, let me type this correctly. Apparently I can't type and talk. It's also going to go to / form, but it's going to display the results. It's going to actually, the handler itself is going to process the form and display results. Let's do this. First one needs to be a GET request. We're basically reaching out to our application and saying, I want you to get the content that needs to be displayed on the root, which we can represent as just /. So I'll say public string and give it a name, display homepage. Sometimes I also call these types of handlers like render homepage. But it makes it clear that this is just going to be returning the content that should go on the page. So we're going to do this as strings. We're going to concatenate together a bunch of HTML. So I'm going to do an HTML tag and then do a body tag. Notice that as long as I stay inside my quotes here, when I hit enter, it automatically puts that concatenation symbol in there for me. It makes it go a little faster. Then the next thing we want to do, actually, I mean, we could go ahead and just kind of set ourselves up for the entire thing here by doing the /body and the /HTML. It's going to be the very last thing. And then we can come in here and say, okay, here's everything that goes inside the body. That's typically a good way to go, just to make sure that you're keeping track of where you are in the structure, because we're not indenting anything here. This is, you know, a very rudimentary way of writing HTML. And it's not going to be formatted nicely. All right, so we'll do an H1 that just says skills tracker at the top. And then we're going to do an H2 that is going to say, we have a few skills we would like to learn. Here is the list. And close out that H2. Oops, except for I need to do it inside my quotes. All right. And then below that, we'll have our ordered list. And of course, we'll need to close out that ordered list. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then between there, we can have our list items. So we'll do the first one and just start listing languages, right? Really, if I wanted to, I could just do like this. I'm going to put several. I'm going to put Java, JavaScript, TypeScript, Python, Ruby. These are some of the languages I have had the chance to learn since I was a launch code student myself years ago. And that'll display all 5 of those. Okay. So that entire concatenated string is being returned from this handler. And so it'll go to the browser using a GET request and be displayed at localhost 8080. So we can come up here and run this. If you are running this for the first time and you don't actually have this configuration there yet, what you can do is come over here to this Gradle pane that opens up on the side, go to Tasks, Application, and Boot Run, and just double click on Boot Run, and it will get things up and running down here. You can see it's doing everything. And when you get to this part where it says Tomcat started on port 8080, and it says started class 8 studio application, that's when you know that you can now go and open it up in the browser or refresh it if you're rerunning it. So we'll go to localhost 8080, and there it is, skills tracker, big H1, we have an H2, and then an ordered list. Okay, so this was the first one. That's all we needed to do, was to display that information. So the next thing we're going to do is write the handler that corresponds to the localhost 8080/form, and this is actually going to be a form. So again, I'm going to use get mapping because all we're asking for is, can you give us the content that's going to be displayed at localhost 8080/form? And then we'll say public string, return a string, and say display skills form. These names do not have to be complicated. They just need to describe well exactly what this thing is for. Okay, so again, I can do, HTML, body. I'll close it out with a slash body and a slash HTML. And then in between, we want our forms. So I'll do a form tag, and I can close the form, but we need to add more to the form. We need a couple of attributes here because we need an action, because we're going to just have a simple submit button. So we want to say, here's the action you should take when the form is submitted. And I'm going to use single quotes to say, just send it back to the same route, /form, but we're going to have a separate handler that's going to do it by post. So we'll change the method from being the default get to be post instead. And that way we can write a third handler down here that's a post handler to display the results of the submission. Okay, so we've got our action attribute, our method attribute set. Now we can do the contents inside the form. First thing I want to do is have a text input. I'm going to have a label that just says name. And all of this needs to be inside quotes. So let me fix this. There we go. And then I'll have an input. This is going to be of type text. If you leave the type equals text off, it's still okay because that's the default. So you may have done that. But this part is important. The name needs to be the exact variable name you want to use as your query parameter. It's going to be important when we go to pull those query parameters out of the request to be able to use them in the other handler. Then I'm going to put a break so that it'll push the next input onto the next line. And now I'm going to have another label for my first select. This will be for a drop down. And I'm just going to say, my favorite language in the label, and then have the select, which will have a name. And here again, this is going to be important. This is the query parameter name for the first select. I'll close that select like this. And then here we can put all of our options in between. So option number 1 is going to have a value of Java. I'm going to do this, instead of doing this in camel case, I'm going to do it exactly the way I want it to display on the page, because I'm just going to grab the value. That's how it's going to be done if we are being consistent. Okay, because this is the value. Let me explain this a little bit better. If I say Java here between the tags, oops, let me fix this. So let's close out the option tag and I'll explain this. This is what gets displayed on the page for the form. But when we submit it using the action and the post method, this value is what gets assigned. If this is the one we selected, then that's what gets assigned as the value for this query parameter. And then that value is going to be what we display on the page, not this. So I want this to look like what it needs to look like on the page when we have the results of the form submission, if that makes sense. And in the future, you might have a more complex way to do that, maybe with key value pairs or something. But for now, that's why I'm doing it that way. Okay, and then I'm going to just copy that line 4 times and edit it so that I can make things easy on myself. We'll have TypeScript. I'm just going to make this correspond to the same order we presented it on the first page. And so I'll say Python, and Python, and then Ruby, and Ruby. Okay, and that's our form. except we need to have 3 of them because we want them to pick their favorite, their second favorite, and their third favorite. So I'm gonna take this entire thing here with the label and the select, and I'm gonna copy it down 2 times. Let me fix it here. Yeah, and then just say my second favorite language and change this to fav2, so it's a different query parameter. And then say my third favorite language and change this to fav3 so that it's the third query parameter. And then we'll just offer the exact same choices for all 3, but the user can choose 3 different values for 3 different select drop-down inputs. Okay, and then the last thing we need is a button, a way for them to submit it. You can do this with a button tag. You can also do it with an input. So we'll do it with an input just to show you what that option looks like. When you do it with an input, you just have to say type equals submit so that it knows it's meant to be a button, and specifically a submit button. And then you give it a value so it knows what to display on the button. And then this is a self-closing tag, so we can do it just like that. The other thing that I realized I forgot to do was to put these breaks, this line break, the BR tag, after each of my inputs because I want it to look. So I'm going to put it right after the closing selects here so that it pushes everything down one after the other. All right, let's rerun our application. You can do that right up here. Once you've done it and you've still got that set as your configuration, just hit this rerun and it'll restart it. And we're just watching for that Tomcat and these statements down here. And then we know we're good to come over here and refresh. Now, right now, I don't have a link on here to get me to the form. So I can type in /form and then we see our form. So again, we made a GET request that said, please return for me the content that I need to be displayed at /form. And it returned all of this for us. And now we have our form. But you'll notice that if I fill it out, and look, I'm using my full name, very fancy. Okay. And I just choose, 3 different values here and submit it. We get this white label error page. Now, do not fret. This is normal because we don't yet have a handler for the post, right? So it says method post is not supported because the only thing we have provided for /form, which is what the action was, is this get mapping. So that's where we're going to need to come down here and write this post. And then instead of getting an error page, we're going to get just a different page with different content. So this is normal. This is exactly what I was expecting to see when I hit that submit button. But I want to do one more thing first before we actually go to that third handler. I do want to add a link to make it easy to get to this page from the other page. So I'm going to just come down here after my ordered list and put a little paragraph, but it needs to be in quotes. Let me fix this. There we go. Put a little paragraph that says click, click. And I'm going to use an A tag to make this a link. href equals single quotes /form. And then just put that link on the word here. And then I'll continue my sentence to select your favorite. And then I can just close my paragraph tag and go ahead and put my plus sign here. And now everything is balanced out. Okay. So let's rerun this and we'll refresh this page as soon as we can. There we go. And now we have a nice link to get us to our form, which is great. Okay, so I'm going to put this in again, have different values, and we can do this again, but we're still going to get this white label error page, right? So let's come down here then and write our third handler. All right. So for the third handler, we would like to see a post mapping annotation this time. And we're still going to say that it corresponds to form. That's what we set our action to right here. So we want to make sure that we're posting to the same route for now until we change it with the bonus missions. All right, so we'll say public string skills. Actually, my favorite way to name this is to say process skills form. It makes it really obvious what this thing is doing. And because we have two things going on, it's going to pull in all of the values that are the query parameters created by the form for each of the inputs. And then it's going to allow us to use them to construct more HTML that will then be displayed on the page and returned back. So it's receiving and returning, request and response, right? So here's where we need to actually have some parameters, and we're going to use the request param annotation to tag these as query parameters. So string username, this is still regular Java, right? So we have to type our variables here, type our parameters. I'll have fav1, string fav2, and string fav3. Oops, 3, there we go. Okay, and then we're going to return a string, but I want to point out here a couple of things. One, as I mentioned earlier, it's very important that these have the exact same names that we gave our inputs. So here on this input where I said, you know, make that name username, and here on the select where each select has a name, you know, fav1, fav2, and fav3, those have to correspond so that we can actually pull the values off of that. Let me close this Gradle panel. There we go. So that it actually can, you know, create these local variables for us as parameters to use down here. And it will hold those values coming from those inputs that we created. Okay, so here's where we actually create our new HTML. We need the same thing as usual. We need HTML, body. We need to close our body and close our HTML. And then we can come here and add content. So what I would like to do is to just have, for example, maybe we have an H1 on the page. Actually, in fact, I think we're instructed to have an H1 on the page. We can go back and look. Yeah, they want an H1 that covers the name so that it'll look like this, and then we can have an ordered list. I think I am also going to add an H2 or an H3 or something in between. But yeah, we can just say H1 and then concatenate the username like this that's coming from that query parameter. And you can see this lights up because it's saying, okay, well, now we're using this value that's coming in as a query parameter. And then I'll close the H1 like this. And then in the next line, I am going to add a little H3 in here that just says favorite languages, just to put a label on our list. Close the H3. And then here's where we can have our ordered list. So I'll do that. I'll close the ordered list. And then in between, we'll do a list item. And we need to concatenate it with fav1 so we get the value that came in as the query parameter from the form. And that needs to be in quotes. Let me fix that. Okay, oh, and I can actually just duplicate this, right, and just say fav2 and fav3, and it's that simple. Oops. Well, it would be if I did it right. Let's see. There we go. So now we're using all 4 of the query parameters, and we're going to display them on the page as soon as the form is submitted and processed through here, which is why I called this process skills form. Okay, so let's restart our application and watch it in action. We'll come back over here. It looks like it's ready to go. I'm going to reset the form by just hitting refresh there. I'll put my name in again, make some selections, and say submit. And then it has my name, favorite languages, and Java, TypeScript, and JavaScript in no particular order, actually. Okay, I'm just mixing it up every time. So that's it. That's the main instruction, the main exercise. Now all we have left are our bonus missions. So the first one says, use a table instead of an ordered list. So we're going to come down here where we've put, these, this information here, and I'm just going to convert this into a table. So table and slash table. And then I'm going to have each of these be a row no, not a row. I'm gonna have it be a cell, so a TD. But I need to put them inside rows. So we're gonna have to fill this out a little bit. So I'm gonna keep these, but then I'm gonna put them inside a TR. And I'll close the TR around each one. Each one needs to be on a separate row. But the other thing I want to do is to have another cell that actually has that number, so it still looks like an ordered list. So I'll do another TD here in front of this one, in column 1. That and actually I can just use the same string because I'm going to hard code it. So I'm just going to say 1 period / TD like that, and close it. Okay, so I can copy. Actually, what might be easier? Let's do this. I'm going to get rid of that. Let's just copy all 3 of these sections here, so that we have all 3 rows already intact. We'll change this one to 2 and this one to 2. Change this one to 3 and this one to 3. And now we have 3 rows with 2 columns each. 1, fave 1, 2, fave 2, 3, fave 3. And then we end our table. Okay, so let's restart it and take a look at this. All right. It says confirm form resubmission because I'm trying to say, hey, just use the same parameters. And it worked because the browser still had track of those parameters. But of course, if I went back to the form and submitted it here, I'm going to see the same thing. And you see that it looks a lot like an ordered list. It's just not indented, but it's definitely still, it's in table format instead. I don't have any kind of default styling on this, so you can't really see like the lines around the cells, but that is what's going on. All right, so the last bonus mission says to add a new path to the site to display the information from the completed form. So the idea here is that instead of having the form be at /form and the results on the action go to form, we can change the action to something else. I'm going to call it results. And down here, I'm going to change this so that it goes to results. That means I need to update my note here to say localhost 8080 /results. We're going to just have it be a different route altogether, but it'll still work the same way as long as we have also changed the action here so it corresponds properly. So let's restart it. And you'll see it says /form, but as soon as I refresh it, actually, I need to go back and do it fresh. Okay, so we're going to have a fresh form and put in our languages, JavaScript, TypeScript, Ruby, submit. And now we see that our results are at /results instead of /form, which is exactly what we wanted to accomplish. Okay, that is it, guys. I hope this has been helpful for you in understanding, what these annotations mean, what they're for, why we set these values here for each of these paths as the routes that they correspond to in the browser at localhost 8080, and why we're returning this as text, and why we use get versus post, and how important it is to make sure your action corresponds to the post route and that you're specifying post in that case, and then also making sure that these names for each of your different input types correspond exactly to your query parameters that you're receiving here with the request param before using them to display new content after the form has been submitted. And if you understand all of these things clearly at this point, you're going to be well positioned to continue on and learn more about alternate ways to do this once we start using templates with Timeleaf. All right, thanks for hanging with me, and I will see you in the next one.